And you mentioned a little bit with Mr. Wonderful of just working all the time because you are putting things off. You are putting the system off. You are putting hiring somebody. You are putting whatever it may be is burnout.
Right.
You know, I mean, I remember, if you're not familiar with, his name is Gary Vaynerchuk. When he first started talking about this, you know, he was one of those guys that hustled. It was a hustle mentality. And he
Right.
too has changed, realizing, wait a second, because our tools have changed, the people have changed, we can do more than we ever could in today's environment with less effort. One more year until it's calmer. One more year until it's profitable enough, stable enough, less chaotic. It sounds responsible. You know, it even sounds patient. But here's the problem. Most of the time, one more year isn't a plan. It's a stall tactic. And today we're talking about the 5 most common business issues that owners keep making that deal with themselves and what it's really costing them. So let's jump into today's topic. My name is Jeff Harrison, along with Swing Point Media and
Leslie Spohr with Concierge Business Solutions. Oh,
all right.
trademark.
So, yeah, there we go. She's. I'm looking at my hair. It's like I didn't put any stuff in my hair. Is that
It's
okay?
okay. Mine's flat too. I don't know. Is
Yeah.
this a bad hair day all the way around?
Oh, mine's like puffy.
Well, you're married to a beautician.
Yeah, it doesn't mean she's like constantly taking care of my hair on a daily basis. She does turn that over to me now and then. So,
Does she?
yeah.
After
Hey,
28 years, she should make sure you look good at least.
yeah. So I'm liking this. This is the lie we tell ourselves about, hey, just give me one more year.
Right.
And you know what, Leslie, before we dive in, it's kind of easy to get into that because, you know, we're talking about, like, so many times we say, hey, to grow a beanstalk is a very rapid process. And there are some times in our businesses we want to do those fast things, right? But then there's other things that we say, okay, we have to grow a shade tree and it takes years to grow that and nurture it. But sometimes we kind of confuse the two and we say, oh, this will be next year's, but you don't do anything about it. You just put off. I'll give you a perfect example. And then I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit, because for years, what I would hear people here in the Coachella Valley, and I'm sure it's true in other destination locations here in Southern California, you know, we really thrive. That's when the height of our season is right now. Let's say from November till, let's say, 1st of May. And so what would happen is, if you're trying to talk to a business owner in that period of time and say, oh, I'm so busy right now, get back with me after season. You say, okay, get back with me in the season. Said, oh, I don't have any money. Get back with me when season starts.
That's so true.
And that is a crutch, the lie they tell themselves. And then what happens is you go back to them, or I'd go back to them, and all of a sudden, you know what, Leslie? They're out of freaking business because they kept kicking that can down the road and telling themselves that lie. There's just one more season. When it calms down, I'll do this.
Right. Exactly. That's what they do. You know, it's what everybody does. It's not unique to any one person. It's all smart business owners do this. Why? Because they have an abundance of caution.
Yeah.
Right. They don't want to increase their overhead unless they know for a fact they're going to be able to support it. Right. And so.
Oh, wait. I'm going to challenge you on that, because you
go ahead.
are an expert at saying, you know what? Do it and figure it out. It's almost like saying, hey, take the leap of faith. You're going to fly on the way down. And you did that when you started your business. Like, you hired somebody right away.
I did.
Because you said, I'm going to build a business. I'm not going to get myself a job.
Right. Most people don't do it the way I do it.
Well,
they should.
Most
maybe
people don't have 7-figure businesses. Maybe they should be leaning in, right?
True. That's true. Well, you know, what happens is it's a mindset kind of. You have to decide where you're going with your business right from the get-go, and what's your exit strategy right from the get-go also. Because if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, then you don't know, how do you know when you get there? You know, I know that's kind of woo-woo question. But, if you're going to set out, most people, what they do is they start a business because they see an opportunity in the market or something they've always wanted to do, or they have a really good skill, or they make great cupcakes, or whatever they do, they decide to start a business. And they don't give a lot of thought at all to the upfront foundation of that business. Who's my ideal client? How much am I going to charge? All these different things. And they keep saying, and they keep putting certain decisions off because they think, well, it's not that important right now. Like, why would I need to think about where I want to take this business 20 years from now? Well, lo and behold, 20 years goes by really, really fast, right? I'm already at 20 years and counting, right? And so it happens practically overnight, it seems like. And so you really have to know what the objective is. Am I building a job for myself? Am I building a business for myself? If I'm building a business, do I intend to have employees? If I have employees, will the price point I'm charging allow me to pay employees and pay myself and cover my overhead? I mean, there's just all these different factors. And I know that by saying that stuff, it probably sounds a bit overwhelming. Like, oh my God, do I have to think about all of that? I just wanted to go run errands for somebody. I get that. But you do need to think about it so that you can make better decisions as you go along. So this one more year thing that Jeff and I, that we're talking about, Jeff, is that when decisions come up, we say, I don't need to do that right now. I'll look at that next year. And then next year comes and you still haven't gotten any further along and you go, well, I'll look at that next year. And so all of a sudden, 5 years have gone by and you're still stuck. I see that in the 5-day challenge a lot. People are like, they have all these disparate systems they're using, and it's fine for them right now because maybe they only have 5 or 10 clients, but their goal is to double or triple that. And if you double or triple it, you have to think about, well, if I increase my client base, how many more transactions do I have to do? Right? And what am I already doing today? And so if I'm already spending 20 hours a week on 5 or 10 clients, I'm going to spend 30 or more hours a week if I double that. Right? And so then maybe it's time to refine your systems and get one consolidated one, or maybe it's time to hire an assistant. And everybody thinks, well, can I support that? Well, you can't afford not to support it. Right? Because what happens to all of us, and I think we've talked about this quite a bit, is that the owner becomes the bottleneck in the business. And so putting off one more year of hiring help or delegating authority or enabling the people that do work for you to make decisions and holding them accountable for that just affects the growth of your business. And it compounds with the more of those answers that you delay. If all that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the one of the things that I think, and this is I'm going to say this is a call you on it like episode. We're going to kind of go bare knuckles. We're taking off the gloves. We're not going to be really cozy and warm. We're going to say, hey, this is what it looks like. When you tell yourself, hey, it's going to be one more year before I hire that assistant, I'm sorry, I'm going to call BS. That is a bad mindset. It's like, I need to hire, and then that will cause me to be able to do the extra things that pays for that person.
That's
and it's
right.
almost like putting yourself a little bit, your back against the wall. I mean, I see this all the time.
Yeah.
Like with AI as an example. When I can do things that used to take me, 2 or 3 hours to do, but I've turned it into a workflow for my business, all of a sudden that gives me 2 or 3 more hours that I can go do new things, whether it's go to a chamber meeting or go to another BNI meeting or do more one-to-ones or a sales whatever. That freed me up to pay for the money I invested in having that workflow built. So I think this whole thing is like, hey, waiting 1 year in there, hire 1 more year, and the cash flow will smooth out. Hey, you're in business. It's like a
Yeah.
freaking heartbeat sometimes. It's up and it's down, especially if you're in a destination location like we are in the desert, where it's like, hey, you kind of got to be, for some businesses, Leslie, like you have to be like a squirrel. You have to be storing your nuts so that when it starts, in our case, when it starts getting hot, that you have enough to carry over till the season starts again. I totally respect that. I have always been one of those mindset that said, hey, I want to work to get my revenue up and then stabilize it and then go up more, not to do this.
Right.
And I think that, we're talking about being consistent, but these are lies we tell ourselves.
Yeah, it is.
The higher, the smoothing out, one more year when it doesn't feel so hard. You're in business. You're an entrepreneur. It's going to be hard. It just is. Pick that battle and go forward.
Well, and the thing that people put off the most in their businesses is marketing or networking. Going to events, going to have one-on-one meetings with people, going to groups like BNI, which we both belong to, going to groups and having that one-to-one interface with people or with a group so that you can increase your odds. It's a numbers game. So you have to increase your odds of getting prospects and opportunities. And if you don't go do those things, you don't get them.
Mm-mm.
And so many times when I'm coaching people, I see them say to me, how much is your marketing budget or your networking budget? Well, I should really do more of that. Yeah, you really should.
Hello.
In the beginning, if they're just starting out in a company, I always counsel people to spend 3 days a week out of your office, out meeting people, talk to everybody you see, carry your brochures, carry your business cards, make sure that you're building a brand for yourself in the public.
Can I jump in on for just for half a second?
Yeah.
So often there's that occasion, and again, I don't have a shingle out that says I do websites, but I'll have people say, can you redo my website? It just doesn't seem to be effective. And I'll look at their traffic and they're about to spend thousands of dollars on something that gets almost no traffic. It's like saying, I'm going to put a stop sign out on this dead end road. And I'm like, why? Nobody's out there. Like, I would rather say, and I've done this before, please don't pay me for a website.
Yeah.
I would rather you invest in some marketing or, again, buy a membership at BNI and go do some networking, get some traffic first, and then deal with it. Because you know what you have? Nobody's looking at anyway. So, it doesn't matter.
Right. It depends. Email marketing is one of the best things. You just sent me an article about that, about how the percentage of the open rates and the engagement rates are very high for email marketing. But social media marketing is also important, especially if you do AEO with it, if you do AI with it, which we've talked about. You're going to make fun of me because I had to pause mine for a minute.
I'm not going to say anything like that's the worst.
I could see it in your face. I can see it. No, the people that if they've been in business for a while, now they're already, in the beginning, it's easy to tell them go out 3 days and they'll usually do it because they don't have any bad habits built up yet. They just
and how much does that cost you for you going out for 3 days in a row or 3 out? It's only your time, right? It's not really a financial investment.
No, not unless you're doing lunches or lunch and learns or something like that. But if you're just doing coffee or you're just, I don't even drink coffee, so I can meet at a coffee shop and it costs me nothing.
She's a cheap date, folks.
I am a very cheap date. Half a cocktail and I'm on the floor. I'm a very cheap date. So
give her a cup of ice for dinner and you're set.
That's true. So when you're just starting out, going out 3 days a week is a very cost-effective way to get the word out about what you're doing. Somebody who's been in business for a while, and I have people I work with that have been in business for 10 years already, because it seems like 2016 became the jump off point for a lot of these lifestyle management companies for some reason. I started in 2006, but it wasn't until 2016. I meet lots and lots of people that have been in business since then, which means they're coming up on 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not networking and they're not marketing. And so, one of the things one of their homework assignments in the challenge is always to go out and get 2 speaking engagements with realtor groups. And you should see that deer in the headlights panic that see when I tell them they have to do that. But to their credit, they always do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, sometimes,
Because,
well, that's
yeah,
your job. You're the coach to get them to run a play that they're not used to.
right. I just feel bad when I say, you're not going to like this when I tell you what you have to do.
Uh,
Oh my gosh. But they always do it, and they find that it works. And I give them a no fail pitch for real estate so that they can go in and be successful really quickly. That way they feel successful and they feel like they've accomplished something and they get leads and they're really happy. And that just shows them, it's a little bit, to me, it's like low hanging fruit, but it shows them that they can do this networking, that they can do the marketing, and that they can get prospects out of it. Some of them have built some amazing opportunities for themselves just by doing that. So that's where I see that people put off for one more year. Well, I really need to do it. This is what they say. Well, I really need to do it, but I'm so busy with work. Well, what? We've had this conversation about the BUSY word, right? That's like a swear word in business. You don't use that word. Busy is not productive necessarily. I saw something on the news this morning because me, news addict. So I saw something on the news this morning. Mr. Wonderful, they call him that. He's
Sure.
from, what's his name? Shark Tank. Can't think of his name. Kevin O'Leary.
O'Leary.
Yeah. He was saying that he used to promote that you need to work 25 hours a day in order to be successful in a small business. And today he's changed his tune to say, nope, you need to have self-care. You need to work out. You need to eat right. You need to get enough sleep. And somebody asked him, why did he change his mind? And he said, because I noticed over time that the companies that made the best decisions and were the best to invest in were ones where the owners took care of themselves.
Interesting.
And that's another thing where we do one more year, right? Well, when I get time, I'll go to the gym. When I get time, I'll go get a massage. I have to have a massage about every 3 months, if not more, because if I don't, I lose my sanity. It just is a point where I can relax. And people need to find that those opportunities and schedule them in, right? So the problem with one more year is that it becomes a habit. You never ever get out of one more year. and all smart business owners fall for this because either they're afraid to step outside of the comfort zone they already built for themselves, right? Or they're trying to be prudent about cost, right? Without remember I've told you before about how it took me forever to hire a bookkeeper, right? Because I was thinking in terms of hourly rates. How many hours do I have to sell to cover the cost of a bookkeeper? That's how I used to think. And when I finally gave up and hired one, I gave up because as a business owner, I kept saying, well, next year I'll do this. Well, next year I'll do this. And when I finally did it, my business actually grew because I then had time to go out and do that marketing, do that networking. I wasn't sitting in the office banging in invoices on the computer, and processing credit cards. So there's a yin and a yang to one more year. You really have to think about, how do I adopt making those decisions for the business and myself now? As a matter of fact, I would say a trigger is that once you think next year, that's immediately a sign that says you need to do this now.
It's a clue, baby.
It is a clue. Yeah, it is totally a clue. So that's my thought.
I think, when it comes to this, why smart business owners fall for it, is they think they're being cautious, and they're really not. It's how do I say this again? Gloves off. I think we're being lazy when it comes to making a decision to move forward. And a lot of times there's a couple of things that I personally do that I probably have never shared, even with you, Leslie, is when I'm facing a decision, I use something I learned many, many years ago. My uncle Benjamin Franklin taught me this. Um, he said, take a piece of paper, put it down the middle, and put the pros on one side, cons on the other. And if one outweighs the other, make that decision and move forward and be done with it. And so, as an example, yeah, it's very, very simple. And now I am taking responsibility for a decision. I'm not allowing somebody else to do it. I'm making that decision, whether it's hiring somebody, whether it's firing somebody, whether it's adding a new piece of software, whatever it is, going to an event, whatever it might be. What are the positives? What are the negatives? And then let that make your decision. I think it's also is like how success actually raises the stakes instead of lowering them. And by that, I mean, it's like, we recently got a new car, and in about an hour of having a new car, because it's bigger in our garage, we were open at the trunk and it hit the garage door, and immediately I scratched the car. Brand new, right? Well, I did it in 2 places at the same time, so I got a 2-for-1 deal. So I went to the dealership and I said, well, I'll just get some paint. He said, let me look at it. He said, well, here's the good news. He said, the part that has, when you put touch-up paint on something, he said, it's for metal because it could rust. And he said, aluminum, where this piece is aluminum. It's never going to rust. It's not going to look good, but he said, you can get a bumper sticker and cover that. It wasn't very big. And that didn't fly with my wife. She says, I'm putting a bumper sticker in my car. Okay. And then the other piece he said was on the, what do they call those? The spoiler on the back. And he said, that's made of plastic. He said, neither one of those will ever rust. He said, you're going to put paint on there and it's only going to make it look ugly.
Right.
Well, I think that's the case of saying, well, I'm going to just put some touch-up paint on it. It's making it look ugly. And it's really delaying. It's not really delaying. I think it's accelerating the pain. Like many, many years ago when I first started, Leslie, there was a Harvard business study and said, this was my big deal, is like, in 5 years, if you took 2 businesses and one did no marketing, right?
Yeah.
And one did, they said in 5 years, if this business has chosen not to do marketing, they might see an average of a 19% growth over 5 years. Now that sounds like a lot, but they said chances are most of those business owners are going to be out of business. But the ones that decided to invest in their business and do marketing saw an average, now watch this, an average of 275% growth.
Right.
So, that's almost 300% difference from don't do it and do it. Imagine now as a business owner, you're thinking, I'm putting that off, but wait a minute. Am I foregoing potentially 300% growth? I mean, let that sink in for a second, because you're not willing to take that chance because you're saying, hey, I'll do it next year.
Well, first of all, I'm going to challenge your left and right side.
You are.
Well, of course I am. I can't let
not
you
me,
go.
Not me. Benjamin Franklin. Come on.
Well,
he's on everybody's dollar.
I believe in pros and cons lists. What I'm going to offer out there is that not all small business owners clearly see the pros and cons. They're in a forest and a tree scenario, or they don't know what they don't know. Therefore, they can't always, not every time, but sometimes, depending on the decision they need to make, can they see what are the true pros and what are the true cons of this decision. If they could, I would have no consulting career. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about way back in aerospace when I used to do consulting. Same thing with them. These are people that had worked in their business for decades. These weren't brand new aerospace companies. These were established, Raytheon, things you've heard of, McDonnell Douglas, Hughes Aircraft. These were legitimate long-term corporations. And they would bring me in to help them make decisions, and they couldn't see the pros and the cons. So not being able to see them is not a shortcoming. It's just an experience thing. And sometimes you're just too close to the decision. Running a business, starting out your own business is a very emotional prospect. You get attached. to the business. And so it's very easy to say, well, that doesn't work for me, or you don't understand my business, or I know better my position financially. And so it's better for me to put that decision off. And generally, none of that is true.
Mm.
Not in my experience. None of that is true. And I don't mean to say that arrogantly. I just mean that I've made my life into helping business owners. And these are comments I see over and over and over again. They aren't new or unique to anybody. One of these days, I'm going to do a common complaints thing for lifestyle management. I used to do one for aerospace. It was really good. I'd go in there and they'd say, "You don't understand my business." And I'd say, "Wait a minute. What about this and this and this and this?" "Oh yeah, we have all those issues." "Okay, let's fix them." So I want to do the same thing for lifestyle. But when it comes to this one more year thing, I think a lot of it is just a lack of clarity, and people think they're doing the right things, right? That's why smart business owners say, "Well, I'm being cautious because of our financial position, or we still don't have that many clients yet, or I'm able to handle it. I can handle it, or this bunch of systems that I've kludged together will get us by." Yeah, it'll get you by, but it's going to stunt your growth. You need to be efficient in all aspects of business, especially as fast as technology is moving today. Right? I was thinking this morning, I was having anxiety this morning because, like, about 3 or 4 o'clock this morning, because I know more about AI because of being friends with you and because of all our conversations than most small, I would say, the predominance of small business owners today, right? Because it's so fast and so new, but because you're an expert in it, we talk about it all the time. And I started to get this kind of anxiety about, am I spinning my wheels? Because you've shared with me so many things that can, like the training thing I did a year ago, right? That's not going to work anymore. And I just got it done. So we have to repackage it in order to make it fit with the environment today. That's the same truth for all business owners in different aspects of their business, right? The fundamentals haven't changed. The fundamentals of good foundation, the structure of your business, how you go about putting in all the pieces of that puzzle haven't changed. What has changed, though, is the method of cutting the puzzle and how you fit it together. That has changed. And I'm pretty sure most people aren't aware of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like, so what I hear you saying is, and this is something when I started in the content marketing business, is I said, hey, what's the one thing that has been the same since the beginning of marketing? And that's human behavior.
Right.
And that's what I built. That's what I built my business around, which I still today do. But what I have noticed is my tools or systems have somewhat changed.
Right.
But how I produce, or let's say the content that I produce for my clients or myself, because I drink my own Kool-Aid. I do exactly what I recommend for my clients. I do the same thing for my company. Is I adapt to the system, I adapt the tools to the time, but I always say, does it solve that one consistent behavior? If not, then I'm like, yeah, I am spinning my wheels.
Right. Right. And too many business owners are doing that. That's kind of the whole purpose of this podcast that we're doing, right? Is that we both want to help small business owners, and actually you could help big businesses too, but they're a lot more resistant. Small business owners, you're able to share with them a concept or an option or a path, and they embrace it. They almost always embrace it because they get excited. Their enthusiasm comes back. They're like, "Oh, I never thought I could do something like that." And then they're like, or, "Oh, you're right. I need to be putting more attention over here," any of that. And you can actually affect positive change with these people. I love working with small business owners for exactly that reason. When I was in aerospace consulting, I only wanted to work with companies 200 people or less, and ideally 50 people or less. And today I'm working with with 10 or less, right? And each of those buckets have different opportunities, but the ability to affect change and really help somebody is so great, much greater in a 10 or less than it is in a 200.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to do it at 200.
Yeah, I mean, the ripple effect of being able to make those changes with 10 are so much easier than it is with 200, because the resistance of like, oh, here we go again. It's that whisper campaign. By the time it gets out there to the 50th, it's not even close to the original intent.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. You know, I want to talk a little bit about the hidden costs of waiting. And one of those,
Yeah.
and you mentioned a little bit with Mr. Wonderful, of just working all the time, because you are putting things off, you are putting a system off, you are putting hiring somebody, you are putting whatever it may be, is burnout.
Right.
You know, I mean, I remember, if you're not familiar with, his name is Gary Vaynerchuk. When he first started talking about this, you know, he was one of those guys that hustled. It was a hustle mentality. And he
Right.
too has changed, realizing, wait a second, because our tools have changed, the people have changed, we can do more than we ever could in today's environment with less effort. It doesn't
Right.
mean you're lazy. It just means you don't have to work 60, 90 hours a week. Like right now in China, they do a 996. And that's where you work 9 to 9, 6 days a week. And they're starting to see a burnout with their people.
Yeah.
And you know, and I had a dear friend that when I visited him in Japan, they were 9 to 6, 6 days a week, and they had a little bit more time. 9 to 9, boy, that is a long, long day. There's very little time to recoup. And they said, you know, there's a country with a tremendous amount of creativity, but they're so burnt out that they can't do anything else. There's nothing left in the tank. So keep that in mind. By waiting, you're only exacerbating burnout.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I know it for a fact. I lived it. So I know these days, if I want to get up and work at night, because for me, being up in the middle of the night is very, very productive. You know, I can get a lot more done. Phone's not ringing. My husband's asleep. It's just easier for me to work. But what I do now is I go to bed at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and then I get up at 3 or 4, and then I can work before I take a shower. I can get a couple hours in, and I get more done in those 2 hours than I get in 6 sometimes, just because of being able to focus and not having any distractions. It's a big help for me. Fortunately, my husband likes to go to sleep early too, so that works out. But I just found that schedule works a lot better for me, because I told you before, I only work till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. No matter what time I start, I kind of hit a wall about 2 o'clock, and I don't want to work anymore. And since I work for myself, I'm allowed. Okay. However, I will say, because I'm doing so many more networking events, quite often I have a chamber mixer at 4 or 5, or I have some networking event in the evening, and I go to those. But as
But
far
they're
as
not every
between
day, right?
no, and usually they're usually in 2 weeks of the month. There's a couple of nights a week and 2 weeks of the month, but if I get the time between 2 and 5, or 2 and 3, and then 5 to 6, you know, in that, if I get a break in there, then I do a lot better. But then I think, oh, I'll work tonight, and then I don't. I have to go to bed and get up early and do it that way. So my whole personal biorhythms have changed, which is normal, right? They change every 20 years or so, I think. So, you know, and that's fine as long as you know what works for you. If you've seen the ads lately, speaking of that, where they're saying that there's some app that talks about when is the best time for you to sleep and when is the best time for you to get up. And so maybe it's better for you to go to bed at 11 and get up at 4, or maybe it's better to go at 7 and get up at 3, or, you know, just for your own body. I haven't tried that, but I see it in practice.
Yeah.
That this is working for me, because I'm rested. I got, 7 or 8 hours, so I'm plenty rested. It's just having that quiet time that makes a difference.
Yeah, we've talked about that before on the podcast of, when we are constantly interrupted, how long it takes to get back into that deep focus. And if somebody just pops in and says, hey, can I ask you one quick question? And you're like, you were in something, it takes about 20 minutes to get back to that same level of focus. Well, if you have that happening all the time because of text coming in, notifications on your computer, you're answering emails, somebody's walking in your office, you're screwed.
Right.
So I love what you're doing is you're getting up when, hey, the rest of the world is asleep. And
Right.
I did that forever. I'd say, let's start at 5, and I work from 5 to 9 because most of my activity was on the East Coast. And I'd get so much stuff done. I'd get more stuff done in those 4 hours than most people did in an 8-hour day.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I was just grinding, right?
Right. The other thing I wanted to talk about before we move on to what changes things is that a lot of people think that systems magically appear. And when we say systems, we don't mean just databases or apps or computer systems. We also mean workflows and processes and the organization of your company, right? Those things are also a sad byproduct of putting things off for any length of time, but usually it's a year at least. People say, oh, I'll look at this next year. Not wise, because you need systems. They are part of the foundation of your company. And you might not know what they are when you first start, and you may learn them by trial and error. But once you do start to get a pattern down, you need to document it. And it's okay to use a whole bunch of different apps to accomplish what you're trying to do. But quite often, if they're not built specifically for your business, you're going to be doing a lot of redundant data entry that is unproductive and costs you money. And that's okay when you only have a few clients or a few people working for you. But once you start to really build your business, you need something that is streamlined and organized and holds you accountable for the discipline you need to manage the data for your business, whether that's a retail store and the inventory management and the cash flow of that kind of an environment, or the digital marketing where you're doing social media for people and you have to keep track of, you have a process where you create a product or content, you edit content, you publish content for lots and lots of different companies, and keeping all that straight is a lot, or if it's the process for me in Executive Errands, my other company, where how my people plan their time and how they enter data in the system and how they track their time and all those kinds of systematic processes. I'm not sure what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So you can't put this off too long. That's what I'm trying to get to, is that your business will break. The only thing that if you're already inefficient, systems are just going to expose how inefficient you are. But you have to have them so that you can bend yourself into the discipline you need so that you can run a structured company, because it's a good selling piece. If you're trying to bring in clients, and you know this too, Jeff, if you're trying to bring in clients, you have to be able to show them that you A, know what you're doing, and B, that you're credible and that the quality is there, and you're growing. The only way to control your quality, and we've talked about this a million times, is policies and procedures, right? Or having a system and policies and procedures. So that, I just want to get that in there, because people think that I start a business with nothing, I'm on a shoestring, and it'll just all come together. And it doesn't just all come together.
Yeah, winging it is not a plan. And,
No.
working yourself to the bone is not a plan. It's an outcome. And when you talk about systems, one of the things as you were saying this, I'm thinking, a business model that tends to flourish for somebody just stepping in is a franchise.
Right.
And why is that? Because everything you just said, they have already worked through that. And they said, hey, if you'll just follow this system, we have a pretty darn good outcome. We have a predictable model. And I mean, you're in the process of doing that now with one of your processes of saying, hey, you've got everything done. Can you offer this as a business in a box to people to say, all you got to do is step in and follow step 1, step 2, and just do the work. And so that's a way to accelerate that. Now, Is there an upfront cost to that? Yes. But the thing is it compresses years into
Days.
months or
Yeah.
days. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like, hey, it's all there. So,
Yeah.
what you're saying is, like you say, systems don't magically appear if you are the business owner. Sometimes you have to have that moment where you say, okay, I'm stepping back. Let's take a look at what we're doing. And maybe just take a piece of it and say, I'm just going to work on the accounting side. What is the system there? Okay, great. You get that done. What's the marketing side? What's the sales side? What's the customer service side? What's the visioning side? Is there a process to that?
Right.
And document it, as you say. I think that's but the big thing I wanted to put in there is like, hey, I love the idea of that franchise idea. I'm not promoting franchise. I'm just saying there's that business in a box that kind
Yeah.
of accelerates that process.
Well, I'm looking at, and I have a meeting after we do the podcast today about licensing my business out for exactly the same reason. The difference between licensing and franchising, since we're talking about it, is that in licensing, you can give them your name. If you have a trademark, you've got a trademark logo, I've got a system to work through the software, Essential Elements, and I have all the policies and procedures written. So I can license that out for a setup fee and then a monthly fee that's reasonable so that people can have everything they need to get their business started. A franchise, on the other hand, not only does it give you all of that, but it also tells you how much to charge for things and, how to operate your business specifically and what I can give you procedures, but you can adopt those or modify those for your own. In a franchise, you can't. You have to follow them to the letter of the law, like McDonald's. Their food all tastes the same no matter where you go in the world. And there's a reason for that. It's a franchise. They have very strict ways of doing things, where to buy your products, how to use them, all of that, what your packaging looks like, everything. In a license, they have a lot more flexibility and freedom to make those decisions and who their client market is and all kinds of things. And so I'm looking at licensing executive errands for exactly that reason, so that people can't, because they don't know. So many people want to start a business and fail because they don't know how to run a business. If we can give them enough tools to be able to be successful faster, then I think it's a great opportunity. And I keep getting clients saying to me, I wish you were here. I wish you were there. I wish you were here. So by giving people the same kind of tools that we use, then they can operate more like us. And then those clients will be happy. So sorry, I got on a sidetrack, but it came up. So I wanted to share that with you.
It's okay. The show is all about you, so it's all right. It's all right. So, hey, let's talk about what actually changes things. And one is making decisions versus
Yes.
hoping.
Right.
And you're like, well, I hope when things settle down. No. We're going to decide. We're going to make a decision, because one is this vague period in the future. The other one is a line in the sand that says, starting now, I'm making a decision, right?
Right. Well, yeah. And along with that is that people are they stop tolerating chaos along with this, right? When you don't have a direction in your business, whether you realize it or not, chaos is going on. Chaos is what? Energy. And there's always energy. Getting paid for a job you do is an exchange of energy. Money is an energy thing that comes to you. People helping you is energy. And so if everything starts to work in a smooth workflow, smooth processes, smooth data entry, if everything is organized and has a conscious purpose, the chaos noise reduces. I can give you sort of an example. The only thing that keeps coming to my mind is that when we got Maze, our dog, it introduced a whole bunch more energy in the house instantly. And I felt like I was in the middle of a chaos, a tornado of chaos for a while, because she was a puppy. And so, but once we got her trained and she developed habits and she eats at the same time and she goes outside and she does all her things, that chaos, we still have energy, but the chaos smoothed out. And that's kind of the same for your business. You've got to make conscious decisions about how you run your business so that you can control the chaos.
Yeah, and as it says here, why clarity usually comes after action, not before. And that was a perfect description where, when you started getting clarity about, hey, what time does she eat? When does she go out? Who's going to take her out? That type of thing. Does she sleep in a kennel at night? Does she not? Does she sleep
Right.
in the bedroom? Whatever. The action comes first, right?
Right.
The clarity usually comes after action. And it's almost
Right.
like saying, you know what? I want to have bigger biceps. Well, I'm sorry. It ain't going to happen until I take the action and do the work in the gym.
Right.
It's not going to come because I say, well, I'm clear. I'm clear now. Yeah. I have bigger biceps. I look in the mirror and I'm going, nothing's happened. I
Right.
have to take action.
Right.
So,
And that's true for every aspect of your life, right? Why do I say we need to form an action plan? Because if you have an action plan, you have something to follow, and then you're clear on where you're going. We do that a lot in the challenge as well. Part of I talk about the challenge a lot because I've gained so much clarity about this industry and how people think. It's really been a great lesson in humanity and an understanding of how businesses operate. Um, People want to do the right things. Inherently, all of us want to do the right things. Generally, when we don't, or when we flounder, it's because we don't know what the right things are or what's a better path, right? So when you sit down and you go through with somebody who understands your environment and says, okay, let's identify where the issues are, where the opportunities are. And then we can create an action plan to solve those issues. Then the owner gets greater clarity, and they have something to follow. You know what I mean? So, and I know you did the same thing because with some of your employees, you did that, right? You were more clear on your expectations and their job descriptions,
mhm.
and the quality of their work improved, and they got faster, right? So it ended up costing you less in the long run. That's true for everybody, right? People understand the input and the output of what they're doing, then they make better decisions, and everything is about decisions. So it all works.
Absolutely. Hey, this last piece,
What is the last
because
piece?
it's breaking the cycle. So, I think that is
Mm,
really important because it's almost like being in a family where there's this chaos and it just goes from one generation to the next. And sometimes you have to say, okay, I've got to break that cycle so that my family doesn't grow up like I grew up. I'm
right,
not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying, hey, if you had a very chaotic childhood, if you don't do something different, the chances are you're going to repeat that. And the same thing is the questions that breaks the cycle. You
right.
have to go through that.
Well, and when a decision comes up, the question you should ask yourself is, if you're thinking about putting it off 6 months or a year or however long, the question you need to ask yourself is, will I be asking myself this same question when that time period goes
Mhm.
by,
Yeah.
right? What am I going to do today that will make that question different? Because um, all of us do that. It's not that we want to be a procrastinator, because I really believe that business owners in particular think that they're making good decisions. They think that by putting this particular thing off, that they're saving money, or they're being careful, or they're being prudent, or whatever they think, or however they justify delaying that decision. And it could be fear based as well. They may not admit it, but it may be, what if I make that decision, or what if I get successful? That is a scary thing for a lot of people. They say they want success, but if they get it, then what do they do with it?
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
You
So
caught the tiger. Do you really want the tiger in your house?
Is this the tiger you want? Did you really want a
Yeah.
panther? I mean, come on. So,
Yeah.
yeah, these are all questions you have to look at. So if nothing changes, or if you're thinking about postponing a decision, you need to think, well, what will I be asking myself this same question? Because if you will be having to revisit this question, I can give you an example of this. We wanted to get company cars for our employees, and I put it off for a number of years, probably 5 years, thinking, I really want to do it because the magnets don't look as professional and they work, but people are complaining about the mileage they put on their cars, and I'm having to pay them for the mileage, and there was all these things. And then we have good people, and we wanted to keep good people, so we didn't want them wearing out their cars and complaining about having to buy a new one and all that stuff. So finally, we went ahead and got new cars. And the first week we had them, I got like 4 or 5 phone calls from people wanting to know about our services.
Mm.
Okay, so they work. I mean, they're way more visible than a magnet on the side of the car would be. Much more professional, and they don't get crooked. I get very upset if a magnet is crooked. So, because I want to present a good image.
Does that mean if the magnet is crooked, it's not attractive?
No, it means that there's a lack of attention to detail is how I look at it. Right?
Sorry, yeah.
I know you're making fun of me.
Okay.
I know.
You missed it. Yeah.
You're making fun of me, right?
No.
Yes,
the crooked magnet does not attract your ideal customer. I want to stay on this for a second, but if nothing changes, will I be okay doing this again next year?
Sure.
There's a process. It's called future pacing, and I learned this, 2.5 decades ago with a dear friend of mine. His name is Marshall Silver, and he took us through a process of said, you know what, let's just play out the next series of years in your life. And he would say, as an example, and let's talk about health instead of business. If you are someone who is, let's say, 20 pounds overweight, and you've noticed that every year you're going up 10% and you're getting bigger, you can start playing this out and say, what's your life going to be like next year? What about 5 years from now? What's that going to do to your health? How about your mobility? How about your hips and your joints? What if you have grandchildren and you can no longer get on the floor with them because you know what? You can't move around because now you weigh 60 pounds more than you do today. Is all that really worth it? And all of a sudden it's like, and the reason this works, science backs it, is we will do more to avoid pain than we will pleasure, to get pleasure. So if we just try to put this way, oh, I'll have all these things and I'll travel. No. What about if we take this stuff away?
Right.
Those are massive motivators. So if you tell yourself, hey, I'm going to wait to get those cars till next year. What does that mean? Well, your competitors already have cars. And now they're out running around town. They're like billboards all over the place. And you're getting fewer and fewer calls. And you know what? What happens if you have to, and you can play this on and on, all of a sudden, okay, I gotta take action. So I would say lay that on, because you can use that yourself and say, realistically, and I think that's real important, is to be realistic with yourself. Yeah. And say, if I don't do this, how is my life going to be next year? Am I going to be further ahead or further behind? What's it going to be like because I couldn't hire a VA? I'm going to be tired, more tired, be cranky with my family. My health is going to suffer. My attitude really sucks. I'm going to make poor decisions because I'm fatigued. These are all things that are scientifically proven to be factual. And so all of a sudden you're like, then play the other part of this. If I were to make this decision, what is my life going to be like? Really, it may be tough in the first month or two if you hire somebody, but then all of a sudden you're saying, oh, you know what? I don't have to answer the phone after 5. I have somebody to take care of that. Or I don't have to run and put these fires out because I have somebody to take care of that. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that is totally worth it. That's the life I really want to live.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Right.
No, I'm with you.
You don't have a counter on that?
No, I'm gonna let you have that one. I know you're disappointed.
We're kind of talking about this is what an honest answer usually reveals.
Yeah.
We just kind of talked about that. It usually reveals that, you know what? I'm probably putting up a smokescreen. I'm using
I think so.
Right?
Yeah, I think so. I did it. So I believe so. We all do it. Because you get into a pattern. You get into the habit of being tired all the time. You get into the habit of working too many hours. You get into the habit of thinking nobody else can do anything as good as you can. You're faster at it. You know more about it. You're the face to the client, blah, 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 blah. Right. All of that can change. And I've taught people how to extricate themselves from their business and change the focus in a way that they don't lose control of their business, because that's the worst thing that could happen. You don't want to lose control of it. And you don't want your clients to try to steal your employees out from under you, or vice versa. Right. So there are ways to do that. And people are always surprised at how easy it is, really. So I think that we need to especially get off the busy, exhausted bandwagon and start facing these decisions. And if you have to keep a pad that's a decision pad, and write down the things that come to you that says this needs a decision. And then try to see how you can work through that, because sometimes just writing it down puts it in the forefront of your consciousness. And you'll find when you go back to it that you've already made those decisions, sort of like a to-do list. I find that I go back and I have all these things already done because I wrote them down. So, that method also works. I don't know if there's a scholar on that one, but
well, there is. There was a book written that says "Make Your Bed," and it talks about decisions. Decision making is like exercising a muscle, and as you talk about this, write it down, or when you make a decision, give yourself a credit. And because that's like you are exercising a new muscle and you're reinforcing. It's almost like saying, if you have a puppy and you want them to set, when they set, what do? You give them a treat. Well, the same thing is now, and then, a while later, you just say set, and they set, and no treat is necessary. Right. Not that you would hold out, but sometimes you not always have treats in your pocket. But the point is decision is an exercise that you have to get. It's a muscle that needs training. And if you're in a situation where you're noticing that, I'm not making decisions, I'm just putting stuff off, start making decisions. And the decision is, I'm going to make my bed before I leave the house today. I'm going to make a bed before I walk into my office across the hall today. That is a decision. Give yourself credit for that. Right.
Well, no decision is a decision, right? No decision is a decision. You've opted to take no action. When you talk about the dog, then I think of Pavlov. Because Pavlov is the one that proved that you can have a conditioned response to something. So the treats for the dog is a conditioned response. And yes, eventually you can take away. He did it with bells, right? You shake a bell and certain things happen. And you can take the bell away and the dog will still react. It's the same with us, right? We can create our own conditioned responses. I think of workflows like that in my mind, and I know that's a scary, scary place to hang out, but in my mind, I see workflows as pictures. And I know that if I do this, then I need to do that, then I need to do that. And the reason I started visualizing these things years ago, like probably 30 years ago, is because if I follow that workflow, I know I don't have to second guess myself, right? It's the same with decisions. If you have a process for making decisions, whether it's a pro and con list, or it's getting a coach for somebody to talk it out with, or reading another help book about how to do something, if you do those things, however you get there, your brain will say, okay, he followed all the steps. So I don't have to second guess, did I do this? Because second guessing is one of the biggest time wasters imaginable. It is a constant state of panic and taking up time to go back and check. I feel sorry for OCD people. Did I close the garage? Did I close the garage? Did I close the garage? You know what I mean? So
that's where the app on your phone that says your garage is closed is a good play.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I'm saying is that you have to have a pattern or a workflow, even for decision making, so that you know that you were thorough and made a good conscious decision. And all of that can be learned.
Absolutely. Well, I think we have sent this message clearly to those people watching or listening today is, the whole idea is, should I put something off? The lie we tell ourselves is, I'll do that next year. The cost of that is too high, not
Mhm.
just in dollars and cents, but your sanity, your health, your family life, you name it. All those things suffer. Sometimes I don't think we give credit to those other areas. We've all heard those stories of the father that grew up and his kid said, "You don't even know me. You missed, all these years of my life." And the justification is, "But I was providing for the family." In other words, there was an out of balance kind of thing. We have an episode, I think it was 2 episodes back, about the myth of life balance or work life
Right,
balance. But
right.
it's one of those things that, like, by doing some of these things and making decisions like Leslie is talking about, and getting your systems in place, that will free you up to make bigger and better decisions, like, hey, I'm going to go see my children at a recital tonight, or I'm
Mm.
going to go watch a football game for my son on Saturday afternoon, not try to get out one more widget or one more call, because you have systems in place and you're making decisions. So try to stop telling that lie. No, don't try. I'll be Yoda. There is no try. There's only do or not do.
Do. That's right.
Stop lying to yourself about, hey, I'll just one more year. That's all I need, and I'll get this fixed up. Do what Leslie did. Get those freaking cars. Hire that employee. Get those SOPs in place.
Or get magnets. You can start with magnets.
Start with magnets. That's right. That's right.
Some people don't put anything. The average is 20,000 people a day see a magnet on a car. So that is probably the most cost-effective marketing you can do.
So
right?
maybe I should get a magnet for the back of my wife's car with my business name on there.
Cover
But
those
of course,
scratches.
The challenge is that a magnet will not stick to aluminum.
I think that's not 100% true, because I researched this now, because I was going to start.
Sure.
I was going to start something for RVs, a different business, and they're all made out of aluminum. And I did find that there is a way to attach magnets to
So you
aluminum.
put something on the inside, so you give it
I don't remember what it was. I just know that it can be done.
All I know is because when my wife, I should say, when I got the new car and she got possession of it, I had to take her magnet that talked about her yoga off of her other car, which was metal, and it wouldn't stick on the back of the car, which was aluminum. So I know that magnet, and I thought,
didn't work.
Maybe there's something wrong with this magnet. It's lost its magnetic appeal. No,
Magnetism.
it's just the fact that it was aluminum. But now I have to check that. Leslie, as always, this has been a fun time. Any last words before we wrap this dude up today?
No, I thought I had some, but I don't think so right now. I can't remember my nouns at all. So.
All right, everybody. Hey, thank you again for joining us. Make sure to if you watch this, or after you finish watching this, please give us a 5-star rating, give us a comment, and share it. That's how the algorithms say, oh, this is a program, this is a podcast worth sharing to other business owners who are tired, confused, and worn out entrepreneurs.
No, twisted, bent, and exhausted. You said tired, confused, and worn out. That is not the same. Twisted, bent, and exhausted.
I'm used to be interrupted all the time. Okay, I had a different close on that. All right, everybody, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.